Begin the current Daf from Beitzah Daf. Begin on the second line down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues regarding the discussion of the previous Daf, which was the title of this parak of Ein Tzad, which we're talking about the different heterim of tzad, of trapping, regarding the topics as it relates to that of muktzah, if it's considered prepared or not. Just goes by Kasich Nechesket to Adam Daf. Today's Daf. Some discussed in today's Daf are designating animals and birds for use on Yom Tiv, and it's designated regarding slaughtering an animal that is mortally ill on Yom Tiv, which is you want to chaparine and slaughter it because it's going to die. Teachings about eating, which are Mishum Terech Eretz, which is just about proper conduct, and regarding Azaz de Kedusha. There's a Chassidish idea, but the Daf discussed that regarding the audacity that the Jewish people have, that's a sign of their sanctity. Regarding items forbidden on Yom Tiv because of Zilzal Yom Tiv, there are certain things you're not allowed to do simply because it's disgraceful. It's considered Zilusa. Some of the important terms of concept discussed in today's Daf are Hazmana. Hazmana is that you prepared something, therefore that's considered Mukhan, in contrast to being Muktzah, which, although Muktzah actually means also set aside, but it's set aside not prepared. The Vela is the halacha of an animal dies without being properly slaughtered, it's forbidden to be eaten, also carries certain tumas. We begin the current Daf. 2 lines down for the top of the Yomid on Daf Chafei at Aleph. Amar Rabba Bar Ravuna Amar Rav. He says, Haseicher Amas Hamayim. Someone, he closes up a canal, a stream of water. Now, why does he do that? He doesn't want any fish to come in from outside once it gets dark, once it starts Yom Tiv. Oh, so wait a second. By closing up the dam, he prepared, through this action, whatever's inside the canal. Oh, so he does this me'erev Yom Tiv. So then the following day he gets up in the morning and he finds fish inside. Return. It's permitted. This action is sufficient to be considered designating the fish for Yom Tiv. Okay, that was the teaching of Rav. On that of Rav Chizda, he says, Medivri Rabbeinu, from the words of our teacher, which is referring to Rav, which the 3 Amarim we're going to bring, Rav Huna, Rav Chizda, and Rav Nachman, and therefore they call Rav Chizda Chavrin, our colleague. They were all students of Rav. So Rav Chizda says, from the words of our teacher of Rav, you can learn out the following comparative halacha, which is Chaya Shekinina Bepardis. If you have a wild animal that was nesting in an orchard, which is a protected place, and as Rashi says, that the child, the young animals, they don't escape from that reservation because they can't escape, and therefore it's very easy to trap them, and therefore, you don't have to prepare them, because what do you see? You just told me in the halach of Rav that by closing the canal and they can't go out, it's considered muchanim, it's considered prepared. Oh, here also, the reservation is closed off, they can't escape. It's also considered as prepared, which the Gemara is going to shortly, as later on, going to ask and say, wait a second, very different. Where by the canal you did an action for the points of preparing it. He didn't do anything. But Al-Kaban, that's what Rav Chizda is saying. From Rav's halacha, you could learn that the wild animals on the reservation, meaning on this paradise, does not need to be prepared. Rav Nachman says, Nafal Chavin. He says, our colleague Rav Chizda, he has fallen into Birav Ravasa, meaning he's sticking his head into a big machlekes that he's getting involved in over here. Which later on the Gemara is going to conclude with a question. It's just that the Gemara interrupts to say at Ikad Amri, where it switches that it wasn't Rav Chizda, that it actually was Rabbi Bar Huna. As the Gemara says, Ikad Amri, those that say that it was actually not Rav Chizda, it was Amr Rabbi Rav Huna. And he says the same teaching. Medivra Bein Nimot, from the words of our teacher of Rav, we learn out, Chayish, a kingdom of paradise, a wild animal that's nesting in the orchard, in a tzrichazim, does not need to be prepared. On that of Rav Nachman, he says, Nafal Bar Chaver. In the first version, that it was Rav Chizda, he was our colleague, because they were all equal students of Rav. Now he's saying Bar Chaver, because Rav Huna was their Chaver. He was from the students of Rav. Rabba Bered Rav Huna was considered Bar Chaver. He's the son of our colleague. He gets involved with Rav Ravas in the great machlekes. As the Gemara explained, why it's not so simple. Hasam, the case that Rav Chizda, albeit Rabbi Rav Huna, introducing of the Chayish kingdom regarding the wild animal that was nesting in the orchard. Look, Maisa, you didn't do anything. You didn't prepare closing. You didn't close up anything. So that's not going to be considered prepared. By the case of the fish of Rav, of Maisa, what do you mean? He did an action where he closed up the canal. Oh, therefore that's considered as doing an action. That's going to be considered as prepared. Therefore, you can't compare the two cases, and therefore that would be actually considered as prepared in contrast to the case of Rav Chizda. And moreover, the Gemara actually asks the question: is that really so that you don't have to go ahead and prepare a wild animal that's nesting in the orchard? But Vatanya, I'll quote you a Beitzah. The Beitzah says, if you have a wild animal that was nesting in the orchard, you have to go ahead and prepare it. So it's clearly not like Rav Chizda. It says straight up, same case, that you have to prepare it. Moreover, the Beitzah continues. Once we're bringing down the Beitzah, we quote the whole Beitzah. But Drur, we already quote on the previous daf regarding this wild type of a bird, where if it's prepared from before Yom Tov, what you have to do is you have to go ahead and you have to knot its wings, meaning you have to make a sign on its wings, so it shouldn't get confused with its mother, which we're going to shortly explain why that would be. But so not to confuse that you prepared this bird and not its mother, you have to make a knot on its wings. And this is a testimony that said in the name of Shmai Vatam. But one thing says the Gemara clearly is Tiyufta. We have refuted the teaching of Rav Chizda because it says clearly Chayish again in paradise, not like Rav Chizda that you don't have to prepare it. The Beitzah says clearly you have to prepare it. But then the Gemara goes back and asks the question the other way. Is that really so that you do have to prepare the Chayish again in paradise? But the time when the Beitzah says not like that. The Beitzah says Amr Shimon Lazu. It says Moedim Misham Misil. They both agree. Al Shazmina B'Teicha Ken. If you recall, we had this on the previous Daf and Daf Yomi. If, let's say, you prepared birds in the nest. Now, the Gemara had said in the first paragraph of Yudam Beis, if you find in front of the nest, which really there was two nests, you prepared the birds in one nest, and you didn't prepare the birds in the other nest, like we had by the dove cup. The next day you come and you find the prepared birds, but not in their place. You don't find it in the nest. You actually find it on the board in front of the nest. Now, by the other nest, you don't find anything. So Rabbi Shloimy says that they both agree, sha'asurin, that the birds that you prepared are going to be forbidden. Why? Because we're concerned that maybe from the nest that you didn't prepare, maybe they came over here to this nest, because they're not in the original place where you placed them, they're in front of that. Okay, that's what they both agree. Now that says the Beitzah, B'medram, when did we say this, that you have to go ahead and you have to prepare them in the first place? Meaning, they're talking about what happens if you prepared and it's not in the place where you prepared. So then we're going to say that it's going to be, everyone's going to agree that it's going to be awesome. But then the Beitzah qualified, when did we even say you have to prepare it in the first place? That's B'yeni Shevich, B'yeni Aliyah. That's regarding doves from the dovecot and doves from the upper story. Or if it's a Parm Shekinah B'Tzvich and B'Bir, or you have the birds that were nesting in the jars or in the mansions. Regarding geese and chickens, the Yoni Hardisais, or the domesticated doves of Hardisais. Or, and this is the case that we're going to ask from, the Chayish Shekinah B'Pardes, and regarding the wild animal that was nesting in the orchard, what's the halacha? All these kids are mutarin, ve'ein tzrichen zimun. They don't even prepared. You just contradicted from one Beitzah to the next Beitzah. First one said you do, and this one saying you don't. But we're just going to finish continuing the Beitzah and quoting it in its entirety. And the tzipor drur. And regarding this wild bird, which is small, so Rashi points out, the mother and the daughter look the same. So it's tzrich kasha b'chanafei. You have to tie the wings. It shouldn't be confused with the mother, so you know which one it is. Moreover, the birds that their wings are tied, which is a sign for them, and and those which were you shook from before Yom Tov, which we mentioned in the previous Daf in this Masechta too, which was for the intentions of preparing it, and that you recognize that that's the one that you shook. But boiros in the pits, or batim in the houses, or b'shichan in the dishes, or in the caves, they are returned. They've been permitted on Yom Tov because they were already prepared, and you know that. But the thing is, even those that you prepare to be lanes is if they're in the trees, even though you prepare them, they're going to be forbidden. You know why? Shemiyala b'yitlash. We don't want you to be able to use it because you might go up on the tree and you might come to rip off a part of the tree, and then you're going to be over the isser of detaching something where it's attached to. Now, parenthetical, the Beitzah continues and says, once we mentioned about Mukushar and Bamananim, those birds that the wings were tied together, or that you already shook them, if you find them b'chol makom, wherever they are, even during a regular weekday, they're going to be asur, they're going to be forbidden for the one who finds them b'shum gezel, because of theft. Because the first one who tied their wings or shook them, he acquired them already by lifting it up. Because Allah is hefker, something that's onerous could be acquired by lifting it up. Okay, so therefore that's one thing. But one thing is, the first brayso we brought, which we were contradicting Rav Chizda from this, says Chayshik in Bepardes, does need to be prepared. And then you bring me another brayso that says that you don't have to prepare it. So how do we resolve the contradiction? Some of Nachman says Loikash, it's not a difficulty. He says like this. The second brayso says that you don't have to prepare it is ba. What's ba? The Rashi explains ba is the vlat, is the child, a baby animal from the reservation. Oh, that you don't have to prepare, because since the animal cannot escape, so the owner's intention is on it and it's considered muchen. But the first brayso was be'ima, the mother is big and could escape capture. Oh, that's something that has to be prepared. Now the Gemara says, wait a second, ima bezim sagila? So why is it enough to prepare it? Say the mal yasabaya, it needs to be caught. So how is it enough to prepare it? So Elam Nachman Yitzchak, he says, no, I'll give you a different answer. They're both talking about the child. So how to resolve the contradiction? The second bracelet says that you don't need it, and that doesn't require catching because it's a baby animal. But the second bracelet says that you don't have to be preparing it. Is beginas muchaleir. It's talking about a garden that's near the city where you know about it and you're thinking about it, and therefore that's considered as prepared. Regarding the first bracelet, it says that no, you have to go ahead and prepare it. Is beginas she'inas muchal. By garden that's not near the city, so even though it doesn't have to require catching, but you don't know if it's around or not. There it requires active preparation, and therefore that's what we said that we contradicted Rav Chizda over there, that it does require zimun, it has to be prepared. Now continue halacha, the next Mishnah. What comes after trapping the animal? Comes slaughtering the animal. So that's where we go on to the next malach of Yom Tov, behema musukenes, regarding an animal that's in danger of dying, and the owner is afraid it's going to die. Now he doesn't need the animal because he already ate his sudas Yom Tov already. He's concerned about, however, if he doesn't shechter now, it's going to be a huge loss that he's going to turn into an avela. So on that says the Tanakama, lo yishchet, you're not allowed to slaughter the animal, it's still kosher. You're not slaughter elam kain only if you know, yes shahis bayim, that you have enough time during the daytime, lechem amenik zaystli, that you'll be able to slaughter it and roasting it, at least an olive size of the roast, then it'll have a tzarech Yom Tov. But if not, I'll go ahead and slaughter on Yom Tov. Kiva may disagrees. He says, no, even if you can get just a raw piece of an olive size of even where you slaughtered it, which what the point of where it's slaughtered, like Rashi says, is because there it's already skinned, because when you shech, the skin is cut back and you have the meat already ready. So as long as you have time, even you just shech, you could quickly grab out a gazayas piece of meat, get a gazayas of the neck, already shechted. If we keep his more makel, he says that's going to be sufficient. Now another halacha, shechta b'sadef. Let's say you slaughter an animal in the fields. You shouldn't be bringing it back home with two people on poles, because that's what's called avshe milsa. Avshe milsa is halacha why you don't have your washing machine going on Yom Tov. It's because it makes a lot of noise. And it's halacha of zilzal. It's disgraceful. So here also, if you're coming back with big poles, it looks like, well, what are you guys doing? You guys doing work on Yom Tov? But I'll maybe be yodei v'amevam. You could bring it back limb by limb. You could take a stick flesh, and you were coming from your neighbor, whatever this and that. Then you could bring it back like that. Now the Gemara introduced a halacha that's going to come back to the halacha of our Mishnah regarding preparing meat. Amar Rami Bar Abba says hefshet b'nituach. Regarding skinning an animal and dismembering it, meaning cutting it to small pieces. The pasuk already told us ba'oila, by the totally burnt sacrifice, which is eaten by the mizbeach for Hashem, and v'hu hadid, we could learn the same thing, the katzavim for butchers, meaning for regular people when they're eating, which is, what do you learn from the carbon oila? The oila, it says in the pasuk v'hivshet is oila b'nitech ha'yisol and sachal, that you're supposed to skin the animal first and then you cut it into small pieces. Oh, makan lom the Torah derech. The Torah is coming to teach you proper conduct. You shouldn't eat meat before you first skin the animal and you cut it into pieces. Now the Gemara wonders, it says, wait a second, what does this halacha come to teach? Is this really derech eretz, like just proper conduct? Or is it actually teaching us the halachas of Isser? What does that mean? Because maybe it's going to tell us that you're actually not allowed to eat from the meat until you first cut it into small pieces. What would be an Isser? You might find somewhere hidden throughout the animal, right? An animal, if it has any mortal defect, it's what's called a treifa. It had a mortal defect. Now, we presume an animal to have suffix of treifas even before you even looked and saw any simony treifas. Maybe that's what it's coming to teach us. As the Gemara explains, if you think it's coming to exclude from Rav Huna, what did Rav Huna say? Rav Huna said the following halacha. He said, Behema b'chayeha, an animal, when it's alive, is becheskes isser. This is like your classic, shmaitza sugya, which is an animal when it's alive, there's a presumption of it being usser. Which isser? Even acham. Right now, the animal stands in a presumptive state of isser of even achai. That's what I meant. That's what it's standing in. Now, what's the nafkamin that has a cheskes isser? Let's say you have a suffix regarding the shchita. Oh, wait a second. So when you have a suffix, you retain your chazaka. What was the pre-existing condition? Oh, that it was asa, because they have machai. So therefore, it's going to retain that isser. Until you definitively know, how was it slaughtered? It was appropriate slaughter. Until you know definitively it was slaughtered appropriately, we're going to say it's asa. Now, however, the next part of the halach is what we are entertaining to say not like that. Now, let's say nishchata. Let's say it was appropriately slaughtered. We know it was appropriately slaughtered. So then, b'cheskes heter now has a presumptive state of heter, because Rashi explains what Rav Huna is obviously saying. Why is it b'cheskes heter? Because we presume generally an animal is not a treifa. And if you subsequently find a hole in the lungs, or let's say in the intestines, we could suspend it and say, okay, what happened after the shechita, when they were handling it, and it's going to be kosher. And on the other hand, you could say that maybe it happened before the shechita, it's going to be usher. That's what we're saying. No, you retain the chazaka that it had, which when you found this suffix, since it was after shechita, we retained that cheskes heter. Until you know what it became a treifa. On that, the Gemara is entertaining to say, wait a second, maybe Rami Ba'abba is coming to exclude from that. And they're saying that no, we learned from the Oila, you cannot eat until you first skin it, and you cut into small pieces, so you'll be checking out the whole animal, you'll see, oh, maybe it has a treifa. Maybe a treifa, who cares? If it's after the shechita, it's mutter. Rami Ba'abba is saying no, maybe saying that it'll be aser, because we don't retain a cheskes heter. Says, well, how could you say that? How could you say Rav Ba'abba is coming to exclude? This way it relates back to Allah of Mishnah, but not saying Rav Huna. But our Mishnah says like Rav Huna. Where does our Mishnah say like Rav Huna? That's not. We learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva, he said, he said, if you have an animal in danger of dying, the animal is going to die, so it's quickly shafted, but it has to be tzarich echel nefesh. So Rabbi Kiva said, as long as you get a raw piece of meat, bite a kazayis out of the animal where you slaughter it, that's enough. My lab isn't Rabbi Kiva saying literally from where you slaughtered it, meaning before you skin the animal. That would be the chiddush of where you slaughtered, because that's the most easily accessible, because you already cut over there during the shechita. So you see, like Rav Huna, that you don't have to go and skin the animal, not like Rav Ba'abba. So no, it's not what Rav Kiva means. He means interesting way of saying it, but it means to say maybe like Rav Ba'abba, that you do have to skin the animal. So where would you get this? It's from where it crushes its food. That's what teveches is, like slices, it butchers its food, which is in its intestines, because that's where the food gets crushed and digested over there. So it's saying, you can get to that, I can get to that by skinning and dismembering. You don't have to roast it like the Tanakhama says, but it wouldn't necessarily be from the neck, because it actually cannot take from the neck. Could it be like Rambam? But the Gemara says, no, you can't say it. He was told literally from the place where you butcher, which is the neck. So El Rav Gemara concludes, he says, you're right. Rami Bar Abba is not saying an Isser. He's not saying you learn from the carbon oila, you cannot eat from a piece of meat until you skin it and dismember it to make sure it doesn't have treifa, because we clearly see like Rav Huna, that there's a cheskes heter the moment that you shecht it, then we presume that it's heter. And we don't suspect that there's treifas, and you see it from Kiva in our Mishnah, the way Rav Chia teaching the Brisa to clarify. But if you tend to the base, rather, he's just teaching us derech eretz, not because the isra of treifa. He's just teaching appropriate conduct, which is Ketanya, like we learned in the Brisa. What do we learn in the Brisa? A person should not eat garlic, and like Rashi says, tzibul, right? I'm a tzibul, it's onions. You shouldn't be eating onions, meaning what we're learning at Kiddush, like learn the Beitzah, is that you find even Tanoim teach us that a person should not appear to people like he's a ravenous glutton. And so this person is going to eat the animal before it was even skinned. It looks like a rav. So this is chill out, right? So a person should not be eating from the garlic and the onions made right from the top, which is the most choicest part. Olive. Eat from the leaves. You eat from the outer part, which is not the best, because you eat from the top part. And you look like a person that's a ravenous person. It's not really so appropriate to eat like that. Case by similarly, a person should not drink his cup in one shot. If you drink it in one shot, it's a gargar. You look like a person that's a guzzler. Actually, talking about the Beitzah, there's three types of people. If you drink it in one shot, here's a gargar. This guy is a guzzler. Shnaim in 2 gulps, that's appropriate conduct. And shleisha in 3 gulps is megasirov, a person that's arrogant. He sips slowly in his net. So a person, you have to understand, there's the halachas of derech eretz. Similarly, another teaching from V'amar Rabbi Abba, who we mentioned in Omen Aleph, he says, other agadic teaching, he says chatzuva. Chatzuva is actually a grass, an herb, that its roots, they actually go straight down into the ground. Generally, like you see in your trees, it goes all the way to the side. By this herb, this grass of chatzuva, it doesn't spread out to the side. And they used to plant it by the boundaries of fields, so that you know where actually the boundary is, because it's a straight line. And actually, that's what Yeshua ben Nun used for the Jewish people to make the boundaries that they knew from this chatzuva. So actually, this chatzuva is mekatei reglein dereshir. It actually cuts off the feet of the wicked by the day of judgment, because they steal and they extort and they take over the boundary of someone else, and they don't learn from the chatzuva, which has it straight down, that it's not going into, to the side into a horizontal line, taking over some from other parts of the boundary. Netiya, which means to say the sapling of an arla, of a fruit tree in its first 3 years, which the Torah says you have to wait 3 years from eating the produce. It cuts off the feet of the butchers, who they're quick to eat before, and this is the halacha that we were speaking about before skinning and dismembering, which here actually Rashi says, because sometimes you will find that it's going to be a treifa, and if you quickly do it without checking, even though maybe you'll say cheskes heter, but again, it's going to cut off their feet, because you see from Arla, a person should be patient, should wait 3 years. Here they quickly grab and they eat it before they get a chance to even skin it, and also cuts off the feet of the boyavli nidas, people that they have cohabitation with their menstruating wives, who they're too impatient. They can't wait till she comes back from the mikveh and that she's going to be tar. And again, you learn that from Arla, that a person should be patient and not go ahead and eat it in its first 3 years. Tumasa is a type of a kidneys, of a legume, of a bean, which is round like a lentil. It's wide like like a small ma'ah, which is a coin, which is very bitter. And until you cook it 7 times, actually it becomes sweet and good. Until actually it's become so sweet that actually people eat for the dessert. But again, it starts off very bitter, which actually we have a lot of sweet things like that, right? Chocolate, we have a lot of different things that start off bitter, but if you make it and you produce it, it becomes very sweet. So that's mekatei raglein the senein shel Yisrael. It cuts off the feet of, euphemistically, the enemy of the Jewish people. It means regarding the Jewish people, because remember the pasuk says in Sefer Shleiftim, it says v'yisifa b'nei Yisrael lasas hara b'nei Hashem, that the Jewish people continue doing the bad in the eyes of Hashem. V'yavdu es ha'ba'olim v'es ha'ashtaras, and they serve these avodah zaras of Baal and the shtaras. Veselei Haram, the avodah zara Ram, Veselei Sidon, the avodah zara Sidon, Veselei Mayim, the avodah zara Mayim, Veselei Bnei Ammon, the avodah zara the sons of Ammon, Veselei Pelishtim, the avodah zara of the Pelishtim. It says 7 avodah zaras in that pasuk. And you know what it says at the end? V'yazves Hashem, they forsake Hashem, v'lavdu, and they don't serve Him. Now, this turmeric bean, at least after that the owners put in the effort 7 times, it actually comes back to be a good thing. The Jewish people, on the other hand, they're matriach the Creator to bring punishments on them. He should get angry at them 7 times, and they still don't. Mimashmishim, like the pasuk said, like the Gemara says, Mashmishim, from the fact that it says Be'az Hashem that they forsake Hashem. Any day do. I don't know that they don't serve God. So what are you adding by saying do? So Malaz is saying, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I feel like a tumas hazeh. I know they don't serve, but they're never going to learn the lesson of the Tumas bean. Where you go and you cook it 7 times, then it becomes so sweet, even if it starts so bitter that at least you eat it by dessert. Even that lesson, even that Hashem is lamenting, and he's saying that they provoked me 7 times, like the cooking of the Tumas bean, and after all that, they still don't learn the lesson, and I'm still not considered in their eyes, and they don't learn the lesson from the Tumas bean. Now, continuing on other Agadic teaching, a related discussion regarding the audacity of the Jewish people. So we have that in the good and the bad, like every midah. So Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg was told in the Beitzah Daf, Neyman nitna Torah Yisrael. Why was the Torah given to the Jewish people? Says Rabbi, because they are strong-minded, they're strong-willed. And as Rashi explains, the Torah was given for them to toil in it, and it weakens them, and it humbles them of their heart. Because there's a very strong people, very audacious, and the Torah at least subdues them a little bit. Similarly, within the Brisa, the Ramban actually says that actually the Azus is Kiyam Nisyanis, actually helps us go through the Nisyanis. Rashi says is that it subdues us a little bit. Rabbi Shmuel, it was told in the Brisa Rabbi Shmuel, it says in the pasuk in Devarim, which we have now at the end of the Torah, Mimina from his right hand of Hashem is Eish Das Lam, is a fiery law for his people. What does this mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it's fit for these people that they should have a law of fire, which again is so it could subdue them because they have a lot of azas, these people. There are those that say that the same shel elum, that the nature of the custom of the Jewish people are eish, of fire, because they have azas like fire. Shel moli nitna Torah Yisrael, because if the Torah was not given to the Jewish people, there wouldn't be any culture, any language that could dominate the Jewish people, because they're as azas like fire. And actually, that's what it means. Miminoi is eish das lama, meaning from his right hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the Torah because eish das lama, because their nature is fiery. Therefore, Hashem gave them the Torah. And actually, behind Torah Shem Lakar, this is where Shem Lakar says Gimel Azadin. There are 3 entities that are that have audacity, which Rashi says means to say that they're very difficult to win. Yisrael B'Umos, the Jewish people of the nations. Kelev B'Chai is a dog by the wild creatures, and Tarnagel B'Eifers, and a rooster from the fowl, from the different birds. V'yeshon, some say another one is Af Eiz B'Mehemedaka, goats from the small livestock. V'yeshon, some say Af Tzlaf B'Elon is also the keeper bush of the trees, which Rashi says he doesn't know what is the asis of the keeper bush, but Taisa brings him the Tesefta that because the keeper bush makes 3 types of peiros, which as the Gemara teaches in Barachas, it has its leaves that can be eaten, it's evyonis, which are the fruits, and the kafrisin, and the husks. All 3 can be eaten, so it's like an azaz, so yeah, look at me. Additionally, they carry fruits every single day, in contrast to all other trees. The Ri actually gives another interpretation. The azaz of the kafrisin is that it's strong. They would soak wine from the kafrisin, which is strong, like we say by Pit Maktaris, yayin kafrisin lam huba, sheshoin by sepain, kadesh tehi azah. So you see that it has that azaz in the keeper bush. Now we said in the Mishnah, that if you slaughtered the animal in the field, you shouldn't bring it on poles because that's considered zilzal yomtiv. So related to this idea about zilzal yomtiv, the Gemara brings many different teachings that are like, it's again a zilusa, it's a disgrace, it's not yomtiv dik like they say, which term of the braysom in a sumayetzi b'makli. So there's no problem at carrying, but a blind person should not be going out with his walking stick. Because it's what's called, it's derech chayil, uzn the chayil, it's a lusa the yomtiv, it's not a yomtiv type of thing. So a shepherd should not be going with his pouch. And also you cannot go out with a chair which they would carry a person, they would sit in like this type of a carriage, and they would carry him. You don't go out in this chair, whether it be a man or whether it be a woman. Should actually ask him the halacha. Is that really so? He said, there was a certain elderly person in our neighborhood, but he would go out with his folding chair and he would carry him like that. He says, look, if people need him in the base of Medrash to give a drasha, this elderly yid, someone is permitted to take him out like that from his house to the base of Medrash. Moreover, the rabbis, they relied on the words of my brother Shakir, that he says, Anoah Fixe says, I took out in this kisei, on this chair, the Rav Huna, Mehini L'Shile, Meshilahini, which these were two places that were near each other. It was within the Tchum of Shabbos. He took from there and he took them back. So to Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak, he also says, Anoah Fixe L'Mar Shmuel. He says, I took out the master Shmuel, Mishim Shalatula, from the sun to the shade, Mitula Shimsha, from the shade to the sun, on these chairs. I thought you said you can't carry on a chair. So the Gemara, that's like you said, the reasoning is in Hoyer Ram Sheichel and Mutter. That's different. If the public needs him, so that's going to be permitted. But generally, then, because that would be considered as Kavod Yom Tov. But if not, that would be considered as Zizul of Yom Tov. Actually, Amalei Rav Nachman L'Chama Bar Ada. Nachman said his name was Chama Bar Ada, who he was Shliach Tzir. He was the agent of Tzir, meaning he would normally go up to Yerushalayim. So whenever they had to send something to Eretz Yisrael, so they would send it with him. They told him, Kisol Kas Lahasam, when you go up to Eretz Yisrael, Akif, do me a favor, I want you to take the long road to go around the mountain, and go to the heights of Tyre, which are up the mountain of Tyre, which was on the way to Eretz Yisrael. And do me a favor, pay a visit to Rabbi Yaakov. They asked from him this halacha. He say regarding carrying someone on a chair on Yom Tov, what do you hold? What do you say? What are you timing regarding this halacha of the chair? Now, the problem was by the time he got there, Rabbi Yaakov already passed away. So Kisalik, in other words, when he finally got to Eretz Yisrael, after he already passed Sur, he asked him, what are you saying about this halacha of cheer? He said, as long as you don't shoulder. So as the Gemara, what does it mean when as long as you don't shoulder? So he said, is ba'alunki, meaning what would be problematic is if you put your arm on your friend's shoulder, and your friend puts his arm on your shoulder, and then you have the cheer on both of their arms, that's a very weekday type of thing, and that's very public, and it looks like as if you're going on a long journey, more than if you're just carrying with your hands, so that would be problematic. As long as you don't do that lakasev, then you could do that. Now, it says, is that really so? But Rav Nachman shorely Yalta. Rav Nachman permitted Yalta, who is the name of Rav Nachman, he even let his wife go out where people would carry the cheer on their arms, where they would shoulder on each other. Didn't you just tell me that everyone agrees that would be problematic? So no, Shani Yalta di Beisa. Yalta is different because she'd be afraid to fall down. And since she's afraid, which as Tyson points out, but I thought it's even forget about that. I thought it's only permitted if it's a tzarech for the rabbin, only if it's a public need. So Tyson, yeah, maybe that they needed. She was the daughter of the Resh Galusa. Maybe people needed her. So it could be that there was a need for her. And additionally, she'd be afraid of falling. So therefore, it was going to be permitted even doing it alonka. Now, similarly, Ameim or Mazutra, Mikasvi lahu, they would shoulder for them in the Beis Medrash, which means that they would put the cheer on the arms until they got to that place. B'Shabbat derikla, on the Shabbos of the Yom Tov, when they would make the drasha, they would make a drasha the Shabbos before, and the reason why they would do it, again, is the same reason it should be Susa, because of the fright of the tzibur, which they were afraid of the tzibur who was standing on their feet in front of them, they were afraid to fall down. Some say actually because the people would push, shtift. Everyone's standing on their feet, and it's a tircha of the tzibur, so therefore they carry them on their shoulders. In this way, their slaves and their servants and their talmidim, they would take them quickly to their place. But again, you're right. Generally, you're not allowed to do lekaset, which means balunki, which means to do it on the arms. But again, if it's necessary because of bisusa, because of the fright, or because of the tircha de tzibur, then again, it would not be considered as the ilus of the amdim. It would actually be considered kavod the amdim, and then it would be permitted to do that. Thank you to any time for hosting us.